Brandon, after tonight's episode of Raw, do you have any more of an idea of what is going to happen with Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre? Do you think WWE showed their hand at all tonight with how they promoted that match?
I don't think so. I mean, my hope for that match would be for them to move the title onto Drew McIntyre. I think that we've seen a couple of months worth of Damian Priest now, and I don't personally think that it's working. Others may disagree, but I found that for my money, it's dragged the world title down at least a couple of notches. I'd like to see them move it to McIntyre, but my hunch is that now that Judgment Day has been removed from the equation, that this will open the door for CM Punk to get involved and set up a match between he and Drew as soon as he is ready. And that, of course, clears the way for Priest and Gunther at SummerSlam.
So my question is, do you think that Punk cost Drew the match and then that sets up Priest to lose it down the line, or does Punk show up after the match, after Drew wins it, to set up Gunther versus Drew, or does Punk win it before? And that's the challenge here. Is when you map out the rest of the summer, it almost makes more sense for Priest to hold it, turn babyface, have Gunther beat him or at least face him, and have
Mhm.
Punk and Drew battle with Drew wanting revenge for. I mean, imagine Drew complaining about losing at Clash at the Castle,
Right,
thanks to CM
right.
Punk. I mean, what better motivation is there for him to be upset with him over what happened? So that's what we've been talking about for weeks. And I just watching tonight, I didn't. I asked you honestly because I don't think I got an indication either way in terms of it going a different direction, other than they're setting up more hope that Drew will win because Judgment Day are now banned. So but I think it might be a false hope because that just means CM Punk might cost him. Although it's not really a babyface move for Punk to cost Drew the match either. So that runs through my mind.
Especially in Glasgow.
Yeah, yeah. So I think if Drew if Punk cost Drew the match, I think some fans are going to look at Punk and be like, what was he doing? What was he thinking?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Yeah, it's a weird situation they've kind of
Yeah,
set themselves up in here because Judgment Day are, of course, still fully in the heel category. Everyone other than Priest at this point sort of seems like a lame duck secondary, and Priest has at times come off that way himself, given the way that McIntyre has talked down to him, the things that he said that I think ring a little bit too true. They've had that issues in the past where the promos that guys like Drew are cutting are hitting a little too close to home as to how fans may actually be perceiving this Damian Priest run, and I think he's hit the nail on the head a few too many times. So yeah, they're in a bit of a precarious position here where they've got to be careful because clearly they went into tonight understanding that Drew McIntyre is going to be a full-fledged babyface on Saturday, and so they leaned into that tonight, having him face Finn Balor allowed him to, get the babyface reactions and of course the interaction with Sheamus backstage. He was a full-on babyface tonight, and that will be the way it is on Saturday. But going forward, I don't think that's what they're aiming for.
yeah. I mean, and it's there's such a mix of different crowd reactions that we should expect. I mean, really this summer. I mean, but
Mhm.
the crowd's going to cheer for Drew. I don't think he's going to come out there and heel on his crowd. And so does Punk get booed if Punk shows up? It's possible Punk doesn't show up because of that. Priest is still a heel, but he's, you know, not doing anything all that bad. And seems like he's on the verge of becoming well, I shouldn't say on the verge. There's hints that a babyface run is coming either during or after his title reign, depending on the pace of his title loss. And then the weird series of potential mashups of different baby faces and heels with Gunther, Drew, Punk, Priest. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm looking
I
forward to
think
it.
that
Yeah.
yeah, it should be fun. I think that I think I'd have a clearer picture if they hadn't set the stage for Gunther at SummerSlam, because to me, it would be obvious that Drew was going to win the title if we didn't have Gunther waiting in the wings. But Drew Gunther as a one-on-one match doesn't work under the current
No.
designation.
Right.
So it really comes down to, I think, when is Punk going to be ready? because I don't think that you continue this Damian Priest experiment long term if you know that Punk is going to be out past SummerSlam. Whereas if you know that you've got the Drew and Punk match on the books for SummerSlam and you can do it then I think you can stretch this Priest run a little bit longer to get to Gunther at that event.
So Kevin Toms in the chat area says, "Wouldn't Punk want Drew to win so he can beat Drew and get the title?" Um, I don't. Does that? I don't. Punk should be able to get a title shot against whomever the champion is, regardless of who the champion is. And I wouldn't think that his character is like, well, if I win the title, I want it to be against my rival Drew. I think he would
Right.
take. I mean, his character would like to see Drew lose, but you don't want Punk to cost Drew the match in a way that makes it look like Punk was tilting the scale unfairly against just the fair outcome of a even battle. And now that Judgment Day won't be at ringside, there's it just clears the path for either a straight up one-on-one match where Drew wins, a straight up one-on-one match where Priest somehow retains, which I don't think happens, or something Punk does that Drew overreacts to so that there's a rationalization for it, or Drew does something that prompts and justifies Punk coming out to offset something. So again, I'm looking for, I mean, I think they have something in mind, and I like that. To me, it's not obvious, but I hope and I am semi-confident that it will make sense, that they've got something layered in mind that where this all just falls into place, and they have kind of clever ways to cover the issues that you and I are talking about, Brandon.
Yeah, I assume that the most likely of scenarios, if Punk is to interfere, is that it's similar to the way that they executed at WrestleMania, where he and Drew don't necessarily lay hands on each other, but the mere presence of Punk mocking Drew and annoying him causes Drew to be distracted long enough for Priest to get a cheap win, basically.
And it's possible. BB in the chat area says Drew wins. Punk Drew have a moment after leading into SummerSlam, but Gunther is getting the win. Gunther's getting the
Right.
SummerSlam match. So if they have a
Mhm.
moment, the match has to happen before SummerSlam. It could, and then Punk could win and defend against Gunther and lose. I mean, we could have rapid fire title changes. By the way, I mean if Drew beats Priest, let's say Drew beats Priest clean, Punk comes out, faces him, and says, "You want a match against me? I want a match against you. I want a title shot." Um, I don't know how Punk earns that since he's been out injured. Yeah,
Well, there's
so
also Money in the Bank.
Punk enters
So
Money in
they
the Bank, wins it, and then cashes in to win the title if Drew's defending it in a main event rematch against Priest at Money in the Bank. Does that
could.
make sense? Is
I
there anything stopping
I
that from happening?
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
the Money in the Bank is gonna be decided before that time, so you figure they went almost a full year with Priest. They're likely not going to do that again, and they usually like to do a quick cash in with at least one of the briefcases, so if
Yeah.
just it wouldn't be my first choice, but when you mentioned rapid fire title change, it was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. And by the way, just philosophically, I think every now and then having a title change hands bang 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 over the course of a few months isn't a bad thing. I mean,
Mm,
every title reign wouldn't necessarily be long in a pro wrestling context. Sometimes in
mhm.
UFC, somebody holds a title for years. Other times, every defense there's a switch, and that's sports like. There's nothing prohibiting that from being a believable story. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different directions this could go, but it's fun. I liked the setup for the Finn Balor match. I mean, I look at what WWE does in terms of angles and booking through. Obviously, is it consistent with the characters as we come to know them? Is it building up the match at the PLE if the segment is based around that? And third, does it accomplish filling a TV main event? Like, I mean, as I asked somebody in WWE about why did Edge get such a nice send off, against Sheamus when it's like he's going to AEW, and the answer was we need main events that draw, and this was a way we could get a big time main event on TV and draw a rating with it and not have to come up with something else. It was almost like a relief, and they're confident enough with how things are going with them that hey, we give Edge a nice send off. It's for our fans. It's for Edge too. They don't dislike him. It's hard to dislike Adam Copeland. But they're not just out to, we'll get to Ricochet too, by the way, a little related to this perhaps. But they were out to Baron. So it just emphasizes how much they're always trying to come up with ways to have a main event. So Balor and Drew tonight made sense. It set up a match that was a good main event for Raw. It was a good match, made sense, had a stakes, but it didn't feel like it was giving something too big away. And it gave Drew a good win, but one where yeah, I mean, it just gave Drew a good win, and then had a high stakes stipulation that pointed towards a better match than I think people. Well, it depends on if fans like dread interference or they would like to see Drew overcome interference in his home country. But overall, I just thought the sequence was well done.
Yeah, I thought it worked for what it was. I wish that Finn Balor meant more at this stage of the game. I mean, he has been so clearly defined down to JD McDonough's level. I mean, at this point, I barely see a difference between the two. I mean, sure, you can slot Finn in a main event every once in a while against an opponent like Drew, but as far as, how they're presented in the course of matches, they're pretty much interchangeable at this point, which I think is pretty unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you consider, Priest is getting this big push, but really isn't even. Is he a little bit younger than Balor? Or are they about the same age, or is Balor younger?
They're close, probably.
Yeah,
Indistinguishably
right,
close.
right.
Yeah.
So I wish that Balor was worth more at this point, but like he showed tonight that if you put him in this position, if you give him a strong main event against a strong opponent on Raw, that it still makes sense for him to be in that role. So I hope that whenever things fully break down with the Judgment Day once and for all, that there is something on the other side for Finn that is a little bit more weight. It has a little bit more weight to it.
All right, let's pause, introduce ourselves formally here, and then we're going to go to our on-site correspondent Denny, who attended Raw tonight in Columbus, Ohio. This is a Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post-show for Monday, June 10th, 2024. And I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter and the website PWTorch.com, and the host of various shows on our VIP podcast lineup and through our free podcast feeds, and also over the past month on YouTube, including post shows live streaming on YouTube after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. I also host 12-minute hot takes covering a hot topic in the news. Our latest one this weekend was on Ricochet, so I encourage everybody to check that out. Lots of reports out there of Ricochet giving notice, or some hedging on that, and depending on the report that you read, but that his days are numbered in WWE, and there's some expectations in WWE that he's headed to AEW. Greg Parks, Pro Wrestling Torch columnist, host of Wrestling Latin America, and I talked about that on the 12-minute hot take that got posted this weekend. So go check that out at youtube.com/PWTorch. Please subscribe and leave comments. That helps us with the algorithm. The more interactive our viewers are, the more YouTube sees our show as relevant and engaging our listeners and viewers, and it helps us in the algorithm as we start here on YouTube with more consistent content than we have done in the past. But there's a lot of content out there, so anything that you can do to help us grow, including leaving comments and thumbs up and subscribing, is much appreciated. The other voice you hear on our podcast, the other face you see on our YouTube show live, is Brandon LeClair. He is a PW Torch contributor. He writes PLE and pay-per-view reviews for PWTorch.com, including Clash at the Castle this Saturday. And he is also a frequent guest on Wrestling Night in America after PLEs with Greg Parks. Brandon, welcome back to the co-host chair. Good to see your face as we talk for the first time.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Excellent. We have our email box. Our email inbox is open. So if you want to email the show while we're live streaming, it's wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. You can email us during Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. If you're not going to watch our live stream, but you still want to get your thoughts, your question, your rant on the show, that's the way to do it. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. And you can always check out my live coverage of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown at pwtorch.com during the shows if you want to get my take on things. And then VIP members get to hear my start to finish audio rundown in podcast format of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown each week. That goes, I record that right after I do this show, but it's available If you don't watch the shows and you want to know what happened before diving into shows like this where we analyze it, it's a good sequence, and it's one of the perks that comes with VIP membership. And you can subscribe to our VIP service at pwtorch.com/govip. That address is on the screen for our YouTube users. You can pause that and sign up. We're compatible with Patreon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts native app, and a bunch of other, obviously, almost every app out there on Apple and iOS. Or you can stream our shows from our VIP exclusive ad-free website. Full details on all the ways to sign up and all the pricing, tiers, and benefits at pwtorch.com/govip. All right, so let's get back to analysis of tonight's Raw, and we're going to bring our onstage correspondent, Denny, into the program. Denny, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You just attended Raw, and now you are live on YouTube with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we sure can. You're coming through real loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, so big crowd. Talk about how packed the arena was, first of all.
7,000 people. It's a smaller arena, but it was, I'll say roughly about 7,000. It was definitely the most packed. I've been to a lot of shows here at this one, AEW shows, WWE shows, this is definitely the biggest crowd I think we've had, which is kind of, because I know a couple of years ago we actually got Lesnar for a Raw, and I was sitting there thinking like our crowd was even bigger now than it was when we had Lesnar in town.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Based on the crowd reaction tonight, was it anything in particular? Well, I guess people are just buying tickets ahead of time because of the brand. But what got the biggest reaction of the night tonight? And do you think the crowd, in sort of a macro, big picture sense, was happy that they showed up for tonight's show? Did it have enough star power?
Yeah. There was some notable people that weren't here, with Jey Uso being the biggest one that I was actually surprised he wasn't. They had his merch all over the stands. There was yeet chants all over before and after the show and during the show. I think a lot of people were expecting Jey Uso, but we didn't get it, and I was really, really surprised that he wasn't. As far as star power pops go. Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair got a really big one. Sami Zayn got a really big one. Braun Strowman, Rey Mysterio, they got really big pops. Drew's reaction when he came out at the beginning, sometimes that's the beginning of the show, crowd's ready to go, the show's starting, but Drew's, obviously a major star too. And then, the CM Punk chants were loud and clear during the beginning of his, but I don't think anybody expected Punk, but his merch was all over the stands as well. But yeah, those were some of the more noticeable ones. Otis, there was a lot of Otis chants, and a lot of people were really hoping that he was going to end up, doing the turn today. But that obviously didn't happen. But there was a lot of, the crowd was really hot for that segment.
What was a crowd disappointed in Otis when he didn't, or do you think they understood?
Yeah, there was some noticeable groans and some boos and things of that nature. So yeah, they were definitely hoping for it, and they didn't get it.
Yeah. Brandon, let me jump to you. What do you have a question for Denny regarding his experience tonight at the show?
Yeah, you brought up, you mentioned the fact that there were some notable absences. Did you get the sense at all that there was any disappointment from the crowd, or do you think that they put on a strong enough show as a whole to kind of get by?
No, I didn't get any the when we were walking out, everyone seemed like they were pretty satisfied and happy. There was some really cool moments. We got some really, really good matches. Dragunov and Braun Breaker was absolutely incredible. And before the show, I'm not sure if you guys want me to talk about main event at all, but the Creed brothers.
You might disappoint three people who want to not have.
I might be able to get them some viewers because the Creed brothers and New Catch Republic had a match, and it was really good. And so I would definitely say if you got 15 minutes that you want to and you want to watch a good non-televised, non-really nationally televised match, check out main event, because I was thoroughly impressed with that match. It was really those guys, all the hype about them is real.
Cool. Anything else happen on main event since we're
Bronson Reed had a match against Tozawa, and I probably ain't going to spoil much if I told you who won. and then they did a speed match with right before Raw. It was Xavier Woods and Dijak, and Xavier ended up coming up with that one. So
interesting. Okay, very good. In the chat room, KMB242 says, "How long were the lines for merchandise? Would it be easier to get merch during the show or after?"
So when we were walking in, the lines were really, really long, really long. So yeah, I went to the merch stand right before, like it was right after the main event tapings ended, and it was during the speed match. So I was able to pretty much walk right up during that, and I'm sure the merch lines would have been just fine. Yeah, at any point during the show if you would have wanted. I didn't get up at all during the actual Monday Night Raw portion of it. But yeah, I'm sure they would have been fine there, because there wasn't any noticeable major gaps in any of the seats or anything like that.
The Braun Breaker Ilya Dragunov match. Talk about experiencing that in person. You've touted the Creed Brothers match, but it earned the "This is awesome" chant. That's not my favorite chant in the world. I think it's thrown around a little too much, and sometimes at the expense of this. It can be a sign that a match isn't telling a story where someone wants someone to win. But this was, I think, probably something, because I can tell looking at your reaction as I asked this question. That was a pretty special match to be there for. Breaker just plowing through everybody on the main roster. Dragunov, super talented. And they went back and forth. And when I heard the "This is awesome" chant, I didn't groan like I often do.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when Breaker first came out, because I didn't feel like he got the star reaction that I was expecting. But there were a lot of dog barks and things like that, so maybe like those have replaced the cheers and the claps and stuff for Breaker. So I was ready to dismiss that. But then when I saw the crowd reaction and how they were getting into the story of the match, they told a good story. Dragunov was the underdog, but was fighting hard, putting together some good really cool spots. And again, like, and Toledo isn't, and I've been to, shows all over Chicago, Detroit, major wrestling cities. And Toledo has never been one of those like hot wrestling crowds that I would expect a "This is awesome" chant from. But they earned it from them. And I felt like it was deserved, because like it was one of the better matches that I've seen live. So yeah, I really liked it. And I think the crowd agreed.
Did your opinion of Braun Breaker change in terms of what he can be on this main roster based on watching this?
I've had a very high opinion on Braun Breaker for a long time. So no, I mean, I think it just kind of, I think it affirmed my opinion, if anything, because like I think a lot of people, that have been watching wrestling as long as we all have, share a similar opinion that he has, bona fide star potential. To get what I would probably classify as a more casual crowd, to get them that excited, I think it says a lot about him and Dragunov. I think they both deserve equal credit for bringing that out of the crowd.
Was there any sense that Braun was like winning fans over because of how dominant and physical he is, where they might start cheering him? Was there any hint of that? Or
yeah, there absolutely was. And because like I said, that there was a whole lot of the dog barks. That was certainly prevalent all throughout. And then whenever he would do a cool spot, and he would try to heal up, he was mocking Dragunov's the symphony thing that he does, and he was trying to stay on the heel side, but there was definitely a lot of the hey, this guy's a badass, he's really cool feel to it.
Yeah. Brandon, back to you. Do you have anything else you want to ask Danny?
I would just say, what overall, who would you say, biggest pops of the night? Did anybody have real significant heat? Anything that stood out to you?
Chad Gable had a lot of heat. There was, a lot of heel heat for Gable. Sammy, it was, I think he probably had the biggest, babyface pop. And then, Drew got a really good star reaction. Dominic Mysterio, that absolutely always gets the heel heat. And Rey Mysterio, I believe he had a really big, legacy pop there too. So like, I think those are the ones that really stick out. And like I said, I was the Jay Cargill and Bianca Belair, when they came out, there was a lot of people that were excited about that, and they, like I think both of those women are bona fide megastars. No offense to LA Knight.
Did it
Okay.
feel like there?
Okay, right. Yeah.
Did it feel like there was like genuine interest in the stuff they're doing with Liv Morgan and Dom? Or
Yes.
I've been really curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, like selfishly, because I know like love triangle storylines are typically very cringe in the world of professional wrestling, but for some reason this one has me. I'm interested to see where this is going to go. I even made a sign, that I said, Dom, stay strong for mommy. They took it away from me because apparently if you sit on the side where the hard cam is, where I was at in the floor, you're not allowed to have signs. So they took the signs away from me. Yeah,
because it blocks fans' views. Is that?
Yeah. That was what the security guy told me. He goes, hey, as soon as I walk, I was in the second row on the side that the hard cam sits on, and as soon as I go and sat down, security guard came to me like, hey man, I'm sorry to say this, and I was like, he was really nice about it. And he was really cool about it, but I get it. So, but to the Dominic Mysterio, like I for some reason I'm invested in this storyline. I want to see where it's going to go. I want to see if Dominic's going to fold. Because I know a lot of men in Dominic's situation probably would have folded like laundry to Liv Morgan, but
I was waiting in the segment when they were had the hotel card on the desk for everyone to leave and Dom to pretend to leave, but then reach back and grab the card. And they didn't stick with it long enough. And I was like, what a blown opportunity to just have people at home go, I knew it, or oh, he's gonna. But they cut. I mean, we can imagine that might have happened, but they didn't confirm it for us. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very interested to see where this is going to go. I feel like there was a lot of people in the crowd that were, Dom, don't do it. The stage talk is. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes when Rhea comes back.
Yeah. You had mentioned. I want to stick with this. Talk about the crowd's reaction when Liv was straddling Dom after the dive, and it went on for a while. Like, just kind of what was going on in the audience at that point?
It was a lot of pops, a lot of oohs and ahs, and people screaming at Dom, don't do it. So that definitely got a reaction. I was too far away. I didn't get to see it. So I was on the other side of where the ring was at. So I knew that they were in a compromising position just based on what the crowd was doing. Yeah, I saw that spot coming.
Someone asked if there were a bunch of families in the crowd. This was BB. Not sure if it's been asked, but I'm curious if you saw a bunch of crowds, a bunch of families in the ring. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I know a few buddies that brought their kids. Actually, and then I know that there was a few kids in the section that I was in. There was one little girl who was very sleepy at the end of the night, very passed out, sleeping in her dad's arms by 11 o'clock. It was really adorable. But yeah, and then that's why Toledo's more of a family crowd environment as opposed to a hardcore wrestling town. So I definitely think that says something about the way that WWE is doing the business right now.
Yeah. How did the women's singles match, Io Sky and Lyra Valkyria, hold the audience's attention? They went 10 minutes. I mean, it's not super long match, but not two wrestlers who you would just think, oh, it's going to be a red hot crowd, but they could earn it. And did they?
Yeah, I think they earned it towards the end. And so like Dakota Kai was being really hilarious on the outside, to say it like that. Some of the things she was doing was kind of getting the crowd up going. I'm not sure if the crowd knew who Valkyria was. And I think they're still learning who she was, and I think they did a good enough job to get them into it by the end to care about who won and who lost.
Did you sense the crowd was up on? I mean, I don't even know how this would come across, so I ask. Maybe there's just no way to answer it, but that this was an angle that is either the end or leading to the end for Ricochet. My hunch is. And I don't know I don't know if there's any reports on his final day, but I think he'll want revenge and he'll attempt revenge and not get revenge, and Braun will destroy him. But this also could have been writing him off. But this felt more like trying to promote a match where, they're going to let Braun go over strong on Ricochet. Did you sense the crowd knew what was going on with Ricochet and those reports that he's likely leaving?
Some of the people around me did, but like I again I wouldn't classify Slido as a smart like that follows the internet world of wrestling the way that a lot of us do. But I got the same feeling that I'm sitting there going, I don't know where they're going to go with it, because at first, when Ricochet came out and attacked Breaker after the match, I'm sitting there going like, this feels like they're setting up for a match. I don't feel like they're just going to let Ricochet leave just by doing this. And then they did the backstage segment, where he gets power slammed onto the car, and now I really don't know. If he's out, if he's injured, if this is them writing him off, or if he's going to come back for revenge. Now my thoughts about it are confused.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see what they're going to go. I guess we'll find out if he shows up on AEW anytime soon, or if he if he comes back waiting for his revenge.
How about the Zoe Stark, Shayna Baszler versus Dawn and Fire match? Didn't go long.
Yeah, it was short.
But yeah, any sense of whether the crowd is into this or not? Obviously, we had the star power
on the outside
for this one.
Yeah. I didn't get the feeling that the crowd knew who any of them were. It wasn't they weren't really hot for anyone outside of Jade and Bianca. I thought the match was fine. I like how dominant Shayna looked, and that's how I feel like she should have been presented for a long time. But the crowd just wasn't there for them, in my opinion.
Any reaction for New Day, good or bad, when they danced out or came out and then danced afterwards?
I thought they had a good pop, but again, that was also the second time that crowd had seen them, because Xavier Woods had the match on Speed.
Yes, the match Speed, not the drug speed.
Right, exactly.
For the uninitiated, Brandon, anything else you want to throw Danny's way?
I don't think so. I think we've covered.
Yeah, Denny, anything else you want to share from your experience tonight? I don't know if we covered everything that stood out to you. Crowd chants.
Well, I mean, as far as being in the crowd, I just got to like Samantha Irvin is incredible. She some of the stuff that they do in between segments, she's out there vibing. She's having a good time. She's getting the crowd into it. You can tell she enjoys what she does, and she's absolutely incredible at what she does, in my opinion. I think she's a great ring announcer. If Ricochet is leaving, I hope that she doesn't leave with him, because she would be a big blow. Because like I said, she was she made the night a lot more fun for me. I think a lot of people around her. I'll say, like, been going to televised shows for a long time. I feel like WWE is getting better at not making it painfully obvious that they're on commercial break in between, during matches. Because for a long time you could, and I'm sure you guys, know this as well. You knew when you were on commercial. You knew, they were like, all right, yeah, they're clearly on commercial here when it's in the middle of a match. And obviously when there's no matches and stuff going on, that's a little more obvious. But they got stuff going on in between there to keep the crowd into it. But during the matches, it was less like, okay, they're definitely, like, they're doing rest hold after rest hold after rest hold. There was way less of that nowadays.
And you want to keep the crowds happy. I mean, you're drawing good crowds. You want to give them a good show and not have it seem like they're just props and the only thing they care about is what's on TV. So that's good that might be a deliberate effort on their part to not just phone it in. We had a question from Sean asking, put on the screen, your reaction for Pat McAfee. He was rough again. Any sense of Pat McAfee's popularity or lack thereof with the live audience interacting with him?
No, when he came out, I heard a really nice pop. It was really cool. He actually ran right by me to go to the bathroom in between. I'm assuming during a commercial break. I'm like, holy, like they really do just run out to use the bathroom real quick. During one of the breaks, he actually led a happy birthday singing for Michael Cole. I guess today is Cole's 62nd birthday.
I think they do that in every town. So
do they?
I said happy birthday to Michael Cole recently, and somebody emailed and said, "Oh, they do that in every town."
At every town, okay.
Yeah.
Cole seemed to be laughing about it, so it was really cool. The crowd got into it. And then when when he took over the ring announcing duties. After I saw Samantha Irvin leaving to attend to Ricochet, I've done ring announcing at some of our local indie shows, and I offered up to the security guard and told them that I was a ring announcer, but they said they had somebody in mind. And I do think McAfee was a better choice, so I'll give him that one. But no,
you were a better choice.
I didn't get the sense that McAfee's popularity was waning. I know he's gotten into some, I guess, turmoil with some comments that he's made on his podcast. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with some people's opinions on him. But I didn't get the sense that it was anything turning on McAfee. No.
Yeah.
I did forget. Sean asked earlier. I think it was Sean that asked. Was there anything after the show, especially where Samantha wasn't there to say goodnight?
Nope. And all of us kind of like there was a big part of the crowd that was like, "Oh, is that it?" But then one of the ring crew people grabbed the microphone and thanked everyone for coming and the drive safe spiel. But yeah, there was no dark match. There was no no other star to come out to send us home. So. I appreciate the comments. I see the compliments on my beard. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You're noticing that. Yep.
Yeah,
I was if you could see. Yeah, some people commenting on Denny's beard.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, absolutely. It's a good one. Trying to think if I have anything else, Denny, before we wrap up with you.
No. I appreciate you guys having me on. I had fun. It was a fun show. I saw AEW Collision here back in October, and it was different vibes, but both shows I thought were fun. It's a good venue for wrestling, and we're this Toledo, and that is one thing I was wondering. Ask you guys, I saw like they actually posting like they were showing pictures of the city, like overhead drone shots and stuff like that. Toledo, did that make it on the air?
It did. Yep.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we saw both bridges and the downtown on the left of the river.
Yeah, because I know Toledo was never one of those cities that got the "we only mention the state that we're in" treatment that WWE used to do back years ago. Yeah. They always mention Toledo in their openings, but I'm sitting there going like, oh man, they're showing our bridge, showing our city. I thought they actually presented Toledo in a pretty good light tonight. So
Michael Cole talked about it a little bit too over that. Like they didn't just show the sweeping shot like while they were talking about something wrestling related. Like Cole was actually talking about the city.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Yeah, because there actually have been some really cool moments in Toledo in the history of wrestling, and so yeah, I thought that was really cool. They're actually showing high overhead drone shots of the city. So
longtime listeners know I am an advocate for WWE celebrating every city they go to. I think it's an asset, unlike the NBA, NHL, NFL. Like they go everywhere. They bring the show to stadiums internationally and in mid-sized markets like Toledo.
Yeah, listening to you, Wade, is actually what made me start paying attention to that. And I'm sort of going like, oh my God, they really are just saying that we're in, Wyoming. Now they're not saying what city they're in Wyoming. And then I started paying attention to when they came to Toledo. I'm like, okay, they actually said Toledo, good. And then, but yeah, I feel like it was like actually celebrated tonight. Assuming that stuff made it on the air, and it sounds like it did.
Yeah, I think Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon were the snobs, but they got better. I think, unless it did coincide with Triple H's first run. But yeah, I just don't be snobs. Don't act like you're too cool to admit you're not in some cosmopolitan NFL town every time you go somewhere. Just celebrate that you go everywhere, and nobody's going to not watch the show or think you're small time because you're on 52 weeks a year. Of course, you're not going to just go to every NFL market twice a year. So yeah, I'm glad they're doing that now.
Yeah, cool. But thank you guys, and as you know, Wade, I've been a longtime VIP member, and as always, make sure you guys go VIP. It's worth it.
Thank you for the endorsement. Those testimonials mean a lot to me, and I appreciate it, Danny. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, guys.
You bet. All right, cool. Good report from Danny. If you want to be an on-site correspondent, like Danny just was on this show, you do not need to be on camera. You can just do audio. I know some people it might not work out for all kinds of reasons to be on camera, but it's great if you can be. But we can just do audio, like can we call them the olden days now when it was back in May? Probably not. But I encourage you, just drop me a line. Give us a heads up, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. I will need to arrange for you to be on the show with a special link, so you can't just wing it like on our call-in show days. So let me know, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Just put the the city and the date in the subject line, it's a little easier to find the email and keep track of it. As the date approaches, you can let me know well ahead of time, or even better, a week or two before the show. Cool. Well, let's pivot to Sean in Tennessee and see what he wants to bring up from tonight's show. VIP member Sean from Tennessee, Murfreesboro to be specific. Is it Murfreesboro? How do you guys say it? Am I over enunciating it?
No, it's Murfreesboro. It is Murfreesboro.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. There's no.
I wanted to ask
silent.
you, wait, do I sound better with my AirPods in? Is there not as much feedback as prior, or does it sound any different?
Yeah, I have to mute you. I've had to mute you in the past because your speakers would echo. So yeah, if I won't have to do that now. So good.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. No, well, I want to say, Brandon, I heard you. I saw you on Greg's on Wrestling Night in America, but it was good to see, like I said, a face with everybody. I've been talking to you, obviously, all over for a long time, man. It's good to talk with you on here, man.
Yeah, you too.
So, yeah, I'm glad Denny brought that up about Samantha Irvin, because that is going to be a huge loss if she did decide she wanted to leave and go to wherever Ricochet's going. I mean, like I said, she's the best ring announcer. I mean, now Justin Roberts back in the day was very, very good. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed Justin a lot, but Samantha's the best they've ever had. I mean, even go back to Howard Finkel. I mean, Howard just, you got to have an affinity for him too. But
Lillian Garcia, there's been some long-term ones. Tony Chimmel.
Ooh.
I'm leaving people out now.
That was a good one. I didn't even think about him. That's a good one. But so that was a good point that he brought up, because I put that in the chat. I'm like, oh gosh, please don't let her leave. I wanted to say, was it weird when during the main event match when Priest came out and then all the Judgment Day, came out, which I'm assuming they all came out at the same time. But for me, I was like, Priest had another pretty good promo at the beginning tonight, just going back and forth with Drew, and then it's like, I almost wanted him not to come out, because I wanted, like, if Drew won, it's like, okay, it shouldn't matter to Priest in the sense of he's kind of the alpha male right now. Like, okay, if the Judgment Day doesn't come out, it's not the end of the world. Like, I'm still going to beat you, and I'm still going to. So I was like kind of disappointed when he came out and was trying to distract him and, find ways for him to. I know he's a heel right now, and that's what he's supposed to do, but it was like, man, you're kind of an alpha male right now, and I like it. Did that hurt you guys when to see him come out and try to interfere in the match, or was that just kind of par for the course that you were just fine? He's a heel. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to sort of the wishy-washy nature of Judgment Day right now, and the way that they're sort of portraying Damian Priest. I mean, there appears to be a babyface turn on the horizon at some point, but they're very slow to commit to the idea. And in the meantime, they're involving him in a lot of these angles that are really beneath a world champion. And I think like you bring up, he didn't need to go out there tonight. He could have very easily said that, his cohorts in Judgment Day should go out there and handle it. He doesn't need to put his body on the line right before a world title match. But he did anyway, because ultimately he doesn't trust, the other guys in Judgment Day. But I do think that they have done a less than stellar job of positioning Priest in a way that has made him feel like he's been elevated by the world title. To me, he's still coming off as the overexposed guy in Judgment Day, because that stable is just on so many segments during the course of the show, week in and week out. I mean, how many times alone did they go back to the Judgment Day locker room tonight? It just seems like they're really, really beating that horse. And so I wish that they had done some different stuff. And I think that, what you point out is probably a good place to start. I would have kept him out of the main event tonight for the sake of, just giving him some plausible deniability. And the fact that when he does turn, he can mention that. The fact that he was trying to, let the Judgment Day do it on their own and prove that they could take care of business for him.
Yeah, I'm a fan of how much the Judgment Day is on television. I mean, there's some weeks where I'm like, it's a little much, but for the most part, I like when I think of this era of Raw, I'm going to think a lot about the Judgment Day being such a big part of it. And Now, if it didn't have legs, it would be one thing. But you added Carlito to the mix. You have you added JD McDonough to the mix a little ways back, and then you've got this Liv storyline. I mean, the segments matter, and I think one of the things that they're doing in these segments is trying to. And Brandon, you talked about like elevating Priest's title reign to make him feel like, you know, I mean, he's still like, where's the camera? If this is where you are for a title champion, you know, Priest is like, I'm not used to this. He's like right here still, but he's right. He's really close, but he's not above that line where you just look and go, yeah, I can imagine him keeping the title for a year. But they are elevating him just right on the cusp of believability in that way. But I think so. I think they are trying to set the stage for Priest, putting him in good light as the level-headed guy with a bunch of personalities around him, for lack of a better term, that he's trying to manage and corral and all that. And he does seem like the coach, the big brother, however you want to look at it, more big brother probably than coach. Gable's the coach. And I think it's building a foundation for him to be a babyface, but he's not there yet. I think coming out to ringside, but not interfering and leaving it up to Drew as a heel to sort of be preoccupied with him. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's yes, it's still cheating. I don't know how close we are to Priest's turn. Had he and you do want to have a stare down at the end of the night, but you absolutely, Brandon, could have done that with him coming out after the finish, not as influencing the finish. And I don't know if that was to protect Balor a little bit, which doesn't seem like it's been a top concern of theirs in recent years. No. So yeah, I think it was just to have Priest be heelish and screw over Drew a little bit, which maybe adds a little bit of heat for Priest going into Saturday. But yeah, they certainly could have tweaked that, and it would have played better for where I think they're eventually headed with Priest. I don't think it's a big deal either way, because Priest has done enough heelish stuff that there's going to be a moment, when he turns, whatever they have in mind, I assume they've got something in mind that will sort of override, I think, largely these incidents. But it is inconsistent with building to that, and there was another option that wouldn't have gone there. Sean, back to you.
It goes to the fact that they wanted McIntyre to be the babyface tonight. I mean, clearly they set him up that way to get cheered. They put him, in that backstage segment with Sheamus. So they were clearly positioning Priest as the true heel and McIntyre as the babyface for this week.
Yeah, it's a fair point. 1 star. I know I think it's only been the 2 weeks. But another guy that's been missing, and it makes sense why he has, because he's already got his spot set. But when Gunther's not on the show, man, something's missing. Like, he is a big freaking star, and when he's on there, I want to watch. I want to see what he's doing. I mean, like I said, every promo he's cut has been just really right on. Even in the crowd, I know some people didn't like the one in the crowd as much as I mean, I would thought it was fine, but it was just he's missing, and he's missed when he's not there. So I just wanted to bring that up too, because it was startling to me. The first week it was fine, but then this week it was like, man, I miss Gunther like a lot right now. I want to talk about the Otis stuff again, because I know, Brandon, you probably heard when I was on here last week with Darren Wade talking about kind of the progression of this storyline. Again, I've liked it. I really have. Gable's been a fantastic heel. I think he's really turning it on in a good way. I mean, he makes you want to punch him in the face. He really does. And that's what he's going for. But again, tonight, it's like they have to do this turn on Saturday. They have to. I mean, he is getting slapped around. And like I said last week, it makes me not want to sympathize with him, because Sammy's saying all the right things and trying to talk sense into him, and he's still just doing the same thing. And it's like Denny was saying, there's still some people like, come on, man. Like, we like you. We want to cheer you, but this is kind of ridiculous now. Brandon, did you think anything different even tonight? Or are you just like, it's going to happen Saturday and it's not a big deal? Where are you on it?
I definitely think that they need to pull the trigger sooner rather than later. They're getting to that threshold where the believability factor is going to decrease exponentially here as we go week to week if they don't pull the trigger, because Otis has just, it's been proven so many times at this point that Gable doesn't have Otis's best interest in mind. But I also think tonight, commentary did a good job at really selling the Stockholm syndrome idea, which says to me that maybe they're going to carry this out a little bit longer and expand upon sort of the psychology of that, which I could go either way, because I do think it would be smart to jump to that moment, because Otis is going to get a huge pop when they execute this, to the full extent. But I also think that they probably are a little surprised at how hot this angle has turned out to be, and they might think that it has a little bit more time to develop and really hit a big crescendo. I think that this has been a really fascinating story, in the sense that, similarly to how Otis got over with Mandy during the pandemic, WWE can really hit a particular stride when they do this sort of soapy, borderline comedy type thing with a character like Otis. But when they have people who are good in their role and who are garnering sympathy, and Otis is able to do that, Akira Tozawa has been able to do that, and Maxine has really been able to do that. So I think they've got something here. I wouldn't be upset if they opted to try to pull it a little bit further, but I do think if they do that, they've got to be really cognizant of what the temperature is with the crowd, because you don't want to give up that really big turn for Otis when it comes.
I think this it reminds me of the Miz and Mizdow situation. We always talk about that, and they waited too long. No question on that one. I don't think they're obviously in that territory now. If we didn't have Clash at the Castle on Saturday, I'd be like, let's just get to it. But you want to have PLEs be special. You've got Sammy and Gable. At some point, Gable's going to want Otis to interfere either during the match or beat up Sammy after Sammy beats him. And there's going to be a moment and the crowd's going to erupt, and it's going to be in a big show setting. I think they've done a good job. You talked about the Stockholm Syndrome comments from McAfee last week, Colin McAfee this week. I think that's important. You can see Otis is frustrated, but he had the promo tonight. We had a comment earlier from somebody talking about, that they ran down, Otis ran down. I felt like I was nothing. I had all these things and money in the bank and this and that. And I lost it all. And you could see him saying, Gable brought me back. He brought back my self-confidence, made me relevant again. And I think it was actually really smart for them to insert that promo into the show, because I think it was a recognition of that they were pushing it. And so they needed to basically refuel viewers seeing Otis's justification for sticking with Gable, that he feels obligated. He owes him. He was down and out, and Gable gave him a boost. So I give them credit for that. And I'd be worried if they didn't do that, even more worried if Clash at the Castle was on Saturday. I think we're going to get the payoff Saturday, and I think that'll be fine.
Yeah, I like that you brought that, and I was going to bring that up too, about I did like that he talked about it and said that I felt like I was nothing. But man, it's just those slaps. It's just, like I said, if you're just yelling at somebody and you're just like, talking them down, yeah, that's one thing. But when you're getting slapped in the face over and over and over, it's like, I don't know. That for me, it's like, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Otis is fun. I like Otis a lot. I think this is going to pay off really well. And the crowd, even though they weren't as into it tonight as they were last week, they were still into it and they were still hot for it. So that was good. Going to Io a little bit, I mean, the match was fine. It still kind of did some of the 50-50 booking, which I don't love. I don't know where they're going with it. They got the roll up, and that was, I guess we'll see where they go. But with Io just throwing these temper tantrums, what role do you think she's playing right now? Where do you think she's going? Because I really want the best for Io. I think she's so talented in the ring, and she's got a lot of personality, a lot of charisma. And I think they could do more than what they've done. But I'm kind of confused as to where they're going. Where do you think they're going? What track do you think they're on with her right now?
Yeah, Brandon, they're giving her something distinct in a group where maybe she wouldn't stand out if they didn't figure something distinct for her to do. What do you think of this? I mean, it wasn't just a one-off. I mean, they're really going back to it.
Yeah, I think that it's good that they're giving her an opportunity to show off her personality a little bit, because I don't think we've really seen a lot of that. I also think it's smart that they have, in the last few weeks, sort of shifted the balance of power off of Dakota Kai and onto her, because in previous weeks since the breakup with Bailey, they've sort of been selling Dakota Kai as the de facto leader of Damage Control, especially since Io lost the title. And now they're sort of moving that back onto Io Sky, which I think is where it belongs. I get that there's definitely motivation there, because Dakota Kai is the only native English speaker. So there's a reason to want to have her front and center to cut promos, but I don't think that they necessarily need to worry about that. I think that Dakota can do the translating if she needs to, and both Io and Kyrie speak enough English that they can get their point across when need be. But I think that Io is definitely should definitely be front and center for Damage Control, and whether this recent these tantrums she's throwing weekly, I'm curious to see if it's leading to a different iteration of Damage Control, or if they are going to have some sort of slight tweaking of the gimmick or the way they're presented, or if it's just going to lead to a disbanding altogether, which I don't necessarily rule out, and I don't think would be the worst thing for any of them, except maybe Kyrie. It's hard to see where she slots in, like, without someone like Asuka. But I think it would be interesting to see Dakota Kai out on her own, and certainly Io.
It's a shame Asuka's not in the mix, because that can, I
Mhm.
mean, you want her to be part of this dynamic, whatever arc they're
Mhm.
in the midst of. Yeah, I don't have a sense of where it's going, Sean. I don't. I mean, I'm. It's fine that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I assume it's not just something that you're months from now be like, remember when she was freaking out every week and then they just dropped it. I think they have something in mind. It's going to lead somewhere, but it doesn't have to be huge. But it's leading somewhere.
A couple of years ago, that might have happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess a couple more just quick things. The first was going
Your mug
to
matches my shirt, Brandon. Go ahead.
You're insert whenever. I'm funny stuff's always good. Funny stuff's always good. The Awesome Truth, like I said, I'm an R-Truth fan. I've always liked him. I mean, he's always had some funny moments. I just want the tag team titles to mean something, and they just don't right now at all. And it's Miz can be doing better, even though Miz is, he is where he is at this point, but I still think there's like at least something better to do than this. And I was like, that was kind of a bummer. So I wanted to maybe hear your thoughts in a little bit on that. But then, like you guys brought up with the Dragunov and Breaker, it was a hell of a match. It really was. I was really worried. I told Wade and Darren last week that I thought they went to it a little too quickly. I was a little worried because I'm a Dragunov. I think Dragunov has such. I think he can go places. I think he's a main event guy,
Yeah.
and I do think this did protect him in a way where he'll be fine. I still don't love the two early losses, but I think this was such a dang gum good match, and they told a underdog story where I think they will come back to this, and when he eventually gets to Gunther some point down the road, I think they'll go back to this and say, hey, this is what he did, and this is how good he is, and he's going to come back and he's going to do it. So I thought it was well done for what it was. I still have my reservation, a small one, but it's like 5%, where last week it was like 50%. I was really worried to see where they were going to go with it. And Wade, appreciate you having me on again. Brandon, it's always a pleasure being on here and talking wrestling with you guys. It's always fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Brandon. Or thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Bye, Brandon. No. Appreciate it. Thanks, Sean. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
I guess. See ya.
Okay. Brandon, anything you want to comment on in terms of what Sean just mentioned?
Yeah, I thought that the Dragunov and Breaker match was great. I agree with Sean. I was a little bit nervous about for Ilya going into tonight, especially having lost in the King of the Ring tournament. But I thought that this was really well done. Breaker has been dominant. He has been just crushing everybody that he faces. And here he goes out and has a really good back and forth match with Dragunov. They play up the history that they have together to give you the basis of understanding that, hey, yes, Braun Breaker is this badass who plows through people, but Dragunov knows him. He knows his tricks. They've been here before. They've done this before. And so it made sense for Ilya to be able to take it to Braun in a way that other opponents he's had so far didn't. I thought Ilya came out looking very good despite the loss. And Braun has been very, very good on the main roster so far. I still have my reservations about the presentation, not the way WWE is booking him, but the look. I think the music is bad. I think the gear is subpar, and I think it detracts from what is clearly going to be a main event star for many, many years for this company. When he comes out and I hear that music and I see the gear, I'm thinking bad creator wrestler. And thankfully, everything he does when the bell rings helps snap me out of that feeling, but it doesn't change that initial feeling that I get when he walks out. I mean, the basic red singlet with, you know, the just the generic text like badass and meaner than evil and dog, like that just doesn't do anything for me. So I wish that they would put a little bit more time into that, especially the music. But everything else, I mean, he's been great.
Yeah, it's interesting watching. You know, we had people earlier this year, and even going back further, going, "Why isn't Braun called up? Why did this guy get called up or she get called up, but not Braun?" And I kept saying it's because when Braun gets called up, they're going to be ready for him, and he's going to be a focus of the show. You don't want Braun coming up in WrestleMania season when it's all about other things. It's about Cody and Reigns and on and on. Yeah, it's just, you know, not calling someone up doesn't mean they don't believe in them. It can mean they believe in them more than the other people they're calling up because they want the stage to be his. And it's clear in this post WrestleMania segment that we're in going into summer. And they don't want people to think there's this big drop off after WrestleMania, but by definition, you want WrestleMania to be huge and feel bigger than anything else. What you don't want is a drop off that feels like it's a hangover or a letdown where it's even below average for the company. But we are at a point where it is about up and coming stars. I mean, Ludwig Kaiser's getting more attention. Gunther is obviously getting a bigger push, even if he's not on every week. And then, you know, Breaker and Dragunov tonight, and Lyra Valkyria. I mean, there's just it does feel like a fresh show, lacking some of the established star power. But, you know, Drew hasn't been a big part of some shows, but then he's been a big part some weeks, not others, in rotation. Same with Gunther. They're not just putting the top people on every week, but it is kind of a cool time, I think, to see what could be the foundation of the future. I mean, Dragunov, Kaiser, Breaker, three on the male side of things, three wrestlers who I think WWE believes in to a certain degree. I mean, or differing degrees in terms of what they think their upside is. I hear what you're saying about Braun Breaker. I think there's something about his presentation that is meant to be a little bit retro, scaled back, because it's just he is like no nonsense. That doesn't mean they can't shine it up, and like, you know, music's so important to a wrestler. You can overcome average music, mundane music, but you can really be enhanced if it's better. So I'm not saying they shouldn't put attention into it, but there is something just about it's just him. You know, it's just he's intense. He's wound tight that maybe they don't want to distract from. But I see what you're saying too. I mean, if you're presenting Braun, and they are, as this rising, not even a rising star. It's not like it's a long story arc with him. I mean, he's going to be in semi mains, you know, pretty much going forward. And I think he's earned that and is doing well in this framing compared to some of the things they did in NXT. I think they watched what he did, looked at his strengths, pared down or curated aspects of what they did in NXT with him, and they're amplifying a few things that they believe will distinguish him. So it's fun to watch him in this environment, but I also think they would admit it's a work in progress, and we probably will see some changes as they see how crowds react to him and how he does under this kind of big spotlight.
Yeah, and the chat is kind of echoing this as well, but the theme issue that I bring up is certainly not exclusive to Braun Breaker. I think they've got a problem up and down the card on both brands with theme music right now. I think that it was highlighted in particular, like at this year's Royal Rumble, where wrestlers are coming out in sort of rapid fire succession, and you're hearing these themes that just have no differentiality one between the next. There's so few themes in WWE that stand out right now, and all the ones that do are the classics, the ones that wrestlers have been using for years. Very rarely are we getting a theme from the last 3 or 4 years that people are really latching onto in a big way. They've just had so many more misses than hits in the last 3 or 4 years, and I really think they should mix that up.
Yeah, good point. All right, we have an email from someone else who attended tonight. Let me read this. This is from Daryl, who says, "Hi, Wade and Brandon. I was live in attendance for Raw tonight in Toledo. My first time attending a show at the Huntington Center. We drove 5 hours from Toronto. Wow. The arena was about 98% full. Every available section was open. It was a smaller arena, just under 7K tickets sold. Very enjoyable evening, worth the drive down. It felt very much like a house show outside of the Liv Dom storyline, the Braun Ricochet angle, and the commercials." Interesting. So Liv Dom, Braun Ricochet, and commercials kept it was the difference between it and a house show. The one thing about the smaller venue is that it had no video screen scoreboard over the ring, which meant as a in-person viewer, you had no idea when the matches were in a commercial break. The only time we could tell, and I think they turn the screens off at big arenas anyway. So you don't know. But the only time we could tell there was no on air was when the arena would go dark. WWE tried their best to keep the crowd engaged with video packages, in-house games, and Pat McAfee having his weekly sing-along for Michael Cole's 62nd birthday every week. It's what a weird thing to do. Attached below are the pre-show matches. No dark match took place or was advertised that I had seen or heard about. The only complaint my son had was no Jey Uso. His merchandise was easily the most popular tonight, even advertised during the commercial break. His entrance alone is very infectious. Lots of yeet chants all night. People were very much hoping Jey would come out to replace Samantha or appear after the show ended. It was great to be named. Braun, and Bronson, all three got great reactions during their entrances and matches, especially Braun Strowman. The crowd went crazy for his hot tag. The 6-man was easily the match of the night for the live crowd. Interesting. Dominic, of course, got the most heel heat. Drew got a nice mixture of both for his opening promo. And by the end of the night, it seemed like WWE was leaning him toward the babyface side for his hometown match on Saturday. Have a great show. Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate your take on things. That 6-man match, a real mix of different type of talent in there. Brandon, talk about what you thought of that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really interesting to hear that he mentioned that the crowd was so into it. It seemed like a pretty prototypical 6-man on Raw or SmackDown to me. Nothing really stood out. Yeah, it was perfectly fine. Nothing wrong. But nothing that really stood out. I mean, the Braun spot, I can see where people get excited about the Braun spot when they see it live, him running around the ring and plowing people over. All of that was fine. I thought it was nice that they gave Dragon Lee the pin, rather than just having Braun pin. Was it JD that took the pinfall? I don't remember. But whoever ate the pin, it would have been very easy for Braun to just take the cover and instead tagging Dragon Lee in.
I think it was Carlito. A nice touch.
Oh, it was Carlito.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Just giving Dragon Lee a little win there is always a plus.
Yeah, I mean it's a fun mix with Ray and Dragon Lee. Although it was fun. Cole giving or McAfee giving Cole a hard time for mixing up Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio, but yeah, I mean Braun is just so big, Ray so small, relatively speaking, and the juxtaposition is fun. I just thought it was a fun match. I mean, I think they told a nice story. Dominic, JD, and Carlito are good heels, all in their own kind of separate ways, and I thought they played up all the characters well. And I can imagine being there, a father with a son, and being most into that match with the hot tags and building up heat, and then of course the Liv Dom segment at the end was fun too. Right, let's go to another email. This from JB. Oh yeah, we had the Cody announcement. He brings that up. JB from Detroit says it really looks like NXT is shooting to beat AEW in ratings this week with a random Cody Rhodes appearance, and knowing that they won't be going up against the NBA finals while AEW will be. Good point on that. Yeah, so for people who didn't see or didn't notice, they announced that Cody would be on NXT tomorrow night. They made a big deal out of it. I guess it's the AW connection with All Ego Ethan Page was part of the implied motivation, without overtly saying it. What do you think of that, Brandon? And do you think NXT wins this week?
They actually said he was going there to visit some old friends. So they kind of made they sort of hinted at it. I mean, hasn't there been a bit of a surge for NXT ratings lately? I don't keep a close eye, but
768,000 viewers for NXT last week compared to 790 for AEW Dynamite. People who are interested in this, by the way, if you're into the ratings and the viewership trends, I think we do a good job keeping it simple, but putting some good perspective on the ratings trends at pwtorch.com. We have a rating section in the news section of the drop-down menu on our desktop site, where you can just catch up on ratings. We do Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, NXT, Collision, Rampage, and compare year-over-year numbers and averages for both viewership and demos. And yeah, I mean, even the 18 to 49 demo, which typically has a really big gap. This past week, it was 0.28 for AEW and 0.22 for NXT. But the viewership was closer. AEW does a little bit better in that core demo. They are absolutely within reach, Brandon, of a win this week. You put Cody on that show and then the NBA Finals aspect of it. Yeah. And I mean, it's fun. It's fun that WWE, throws a little something. Becky helped last year with NXT viewership. What do you think of what do you think Cody's role will be? I mean, it probably won't be a big deal, but it's still going to draw some extra people in coming right after a PLE too.
Yeah, I mean, I just looking at based on where both shows were at last week, throw Cody in the mix, throw the NBA Finals in the mix, and yeah, you can see pretty quickly where you can make a case pretty easily for NXT coming out on top this week. As far as Cody's involvement, I think probably a promo that involves Ethan Page in some way, and if they really want to get something more out of this, I mean, I could see Cody wrestling Ethan Page on an upcoming episode of NXT if they really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be anything more than that, but they could certainly go there. So yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what they plan to do with it. I mean, Cody will be theoretically done with AJ after this weekend, or maybe not. Maybe they're going to go to a third match with them, but he might have a little bit of a window there before Money in the Bank if they do a title defense at Money in the Bank. Where he can, spend a little bit of time on NXT and have a little program with Page. So yeah, I could see that happening. It's crazy to think that not two, but a few years ago we were talking about AEW going head to head in the key demos up against Raw, and now it's NXT.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit drop off from AEW and growth in NXT. They're AEW, by the way, is advertising Dustin Rhodes against Jack Perry. They set that up, I think on Collision it was, and an appearance by Roosh and Deonna Purrazzo against Thunder Rosa. Just generically saying Roosh will be in action. And then I think there's a 6-man tag also advertised for the show. So not from what I've seen, not a blockbuster Dynamite lineup. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if Tony Khan is aware of NXT gunning for him, but you wonder if he's going to add a little extra to the show on Wednesday, seeing that Cody's going to be there on Tuesday just to avoid that. Yeah, Mark Briscoe, Kyle O'Reilly, Orange Cassidy against Kyle Fletcher, Roderick Strong, and Takeshita.
I mean, on paper, that just sounds like we're throwing in the towel. It's NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's kind of a collision almost. Yeah. But that's before they announced Cody, so he might.
Right.
Tony might be like, "Oh crap! Okay, we were gonna take a loss, but we don't want to take that loss." Yeah. Twan Max says maybe Cody confronts Gallows and Anderson. Yeah, cool. All right, so back to the email from JB. Number 2, I really like the layering of the Alpha Academy story this week, particularly with Otis bringing up the failures of his past, like losing his Money in the Bank briefcase, Mandy Rose, and Tucker, which I mentioned last week was something that I hoped they would do. JB, maybe they listened to what you said. But yeah, I mean, we talked about that. It was good. To clarify a point I made last week, I don't necessarily have a problem with Breakker going over Dragunov in a vacuum. The issue that I have is I don't think they needed to match up Breakker and Dragunov this early in their runs. I'm with you, Brandon, that I thought they succeeded in Dragunov looking good against Breakker, who's been so fiercely dominant, that not just surviving, but getting in, really good percent of offense. I don't know if it was, 38% or 49% or whatever. I mean, but it was a, sizable percent of offense that he got in. And I think even some of the near falls, I think were, I don't say believable, but dramatic. I think the average fan watching could be pulled into popping for him. So I'm okay with that match. I don't think Dragunov is on a fast track to be in the top tier. I think he's a second tier utility guy that is going to be really good in that role. And 5 years from now, we might be telling a different story. But right now, I think they want to establish Breakker, and Dragunov has some cachet. And I think it's a compliment to Dragunov, as long as he's not just bummed out that he's not, being groomed for SummerSlam or WrestleMania main events in the next year. It's a compliment to him that they wanted him to go out there and have a match that would get a "This Is Awesome" chant and show Breakker in a different type of match that I think in a sense builds Braun's credentials, that he can have a really good, long, competitive match for the national audience that has largely just seen him plow through people.
Yeah, the key to this one for me was just the fact that they really easily could have gone out there and had a match where Dragunov got a little bit of offense in, and at the end, Cole said that he was really game. That excuse for somebody who's getting beat handily but wasn't totally squashed. And this was elevated well above that level. I mean, he was put out there as a peer of Braun, not someone significantly below him. So I thought it worked really well. But I would have echoed similar concerns coming into tonight for sure.
The Ricochet thing JB brings up, so we can get into this a little bit more. I mentioned it earlier. He says, it seems as though reports were correct and Ricochet was written off of WWE TV this week. I really don't see him moving the needle in AEW too much, as he's similar to a lot of the high-flying level athletes they currently have, but I do expect Ricochet versus Ospreay in AEW at some point if he goes there. Again, Greg Parks and I did a 12-minute hot take. I encourage everybody to check that out. We covered a lot of territory in a little over 12 minutes on the pros and cons of, the title of the video is the grass really greener outside of WWE for Ricochet. So first we'll talk about what happened on Raw, and then Brandon, we'll get your take on the possibility of Ricochet in AEW. You obviously watched that product too. But tonight, I said earlier, it could be writing him off, but that's giving a lot of attention to somebody. And again, they're trying to put over Breakker, but to me, that just seemed like an angle that you're setting up a match where Ricochet has a really good reason to want to come and get revenge, and they give him the opportunity, and Breakker then beats him. You could say that's burying Ricochet on the way out, but I mean, they're putting sympathy on him. He's gotten TV time. And as long as Breakker keeps getting pushed, I don't think you go to AEW, and I mean, the way AEW fan base looks at talent, they're not going to go, I can't be into Ricochet being a super exciting match. A wrestler's going to have these excellent dream matches. I can't be into it because WWE booked Braun Breakker to beat him up. I just don't think in 2024 that's a concern. So in a sense, getting this TV time is better than Ricochet just going out there without a ring entrance and losing to Braun. I mean, they're actually giving him some attention. So your thoughts on all aspects of the Ricochet situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said for how, if this is his swan song for WWE, how they've treated him on the way out. I think it's been a pretty marked difference to what we've seen in the past with some talent who was on the outs or on the rocks with the company for whatever reason. They could have handled this a lot differently, like you said, just throwing him out there in squash matches or putting him in no entrance TV matches, whatever the case may be, or the worst, just letting him sit at home for months or years on end while his contract runs out. Instead, they've gotten some good use out of him, and I thought that Ricochet has been a pretty decent mid-card talent for them over the last several months. He's had spurts there where he's developed or redeveloped a solid connection with the crowd, been able to show off what he can do in the ring. So I think that it overall has been, a decent year for him in WWE, all things considered, given how things had actually gone for him at times in the past. as far as what they did tonight, I guess it really just depends on the time left on his deal. I mean, if you read into what was sort of reported today, that this was it. This was the write-off. This was his last booked appearance for WWE. Then maybe that is it. And I guess it works. I mean, you certainly sell that he's injured, and you can keep Samantha Irvin off TV for a week or two, or you can have her come back next week, whatever the case may be. But that could very well be his send-off. I think it would make more sense if they were to bring him back in to do a Braun match. Now, normally I'd say, hey, they can throw that on Clash at the Castle this weekend, but to me, it looks like the level that the injury that they caused him tonight within the confines of kayfabe seems to me like it would be more than a 6-day thing. Like if they weren't promoting a pay-per-view this week, I don't think we'd see Ricochet next week on Raw. So it makes it a little bit harder.
I think they see it as a TV match. PLEs aren't loaded with 11 matches like AEW, so I could see in 2 weeks. Again, I don't know the end date for Ricochet, but you next week you do an update because they don't have time to announce the match to the masses if they did it with a quick turnaround. So, my hunch, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe that's just it. We're never going to see Ricochet again, but I don't think you give that much attention to somebody, and then fans are like, why didn't Ricochet ever get a revenge? And because he's not going to retire. I mean, people are going to know. Most fans are going to know he ended up somewhere. And they're not going to bury him. That's not Paul Levesque's style. He's not like, oh, Ricochet got beat up and he couldn't handle it, so he went to another territory. He's not. Bill Watts might have sold that as the case in 83 or something, but that's not happening here. So my hunch is we get a TV match sometime, late June, and depending on again what the final date for Ricochet is, and we're talking like it's just confirmed he's leaving, and I mean I think it's all reports are very strong. It's leaning that way, and this angle points that direction, but. It's not. I don't think we're at 100% yet as far as that goes.
Yeah. As far as him in AEW, if that's where this heads, I don't. I think that Ricochet's style is more conducive to AEW. I think that he will be one of a dozen in AEW, where he's sort of one of one in WWE, and that doesn't necessarily translate to a main event position in WWE. But I think that it's not because of his wrestling talent; it's because of some of the other intangibles that are missing with him, and those things are less important in AEW. I think that his promo ability has hampered him to a certain extent in WWE, and I don't think that it necessarily would in AEW. But what will hamper him in AEW that doesn't in WWE is the fact that for as talented as he is, there's 10 or more other guys who are just as talented over on that side. And I mean, if he is looking at this and seeing what Will Ospreay is doing and viewing himself as a contemporary to Will Ospreay, my counter to that would just be that Ospreay has passed him by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, very good. I'll go back to JB. I thought having Drew McIntyre interact with Sheamus was a weird move. I assume that they're positioning Drew as a face in Scotland, but they've actually positioned Priest as more of a face than Drew in recent weeks. Sheamus did acknowledge that they haven't been on the same page lately, but I thought it worked in terms of they are longtime friends more than foes. They've gone to war, but they've come out of it respecting each other as much or more. It felt personal, but not in a way that would be like a lifelong grudge. And then it introduced Money in the Bank, and Sheamus saying he wants to qualify, and if he's in it, he wants to win it. And they're teasing, then I'd come after you, Drew, and we'd have a banger. It was an excuse to talk about Money in the Bank. And Cole announced on Raw tonight they'll have the qualifying matches for Money in the Bank starting next week on Raw. So it's good to kind of have different wrestlers, bring it up. And so, yeah, I thought that served a number of purposes. It planted the seed that maybe Drew wins. So tune in Saturday because there might be a title change. And if it happens, hey, there's Money in the Bank that's going to potentially be one of his first challengers. Not necessarily, but it could be. So, Brandon, your thoughts?
I thought that it worked well for what it was setting out to do, and I think that that both guys played the role that they sort of were slotted into, at least for tonight. I mean, we'll see how things shake out after Saturday and how that sort of realigns, but for tonight it worked well.
All right. Why exactly? Still JB. Why exactly is the Final Testament recruiting Xavier Woods? He seemed like a very weird fit with the group, and it's not as though he's exactly been lighting the world on fire in terms of success from a storyline perspective. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I'm fine with New Day breaking up if they change their gimmick, but it's the whole thing is weird.
I gotta say, for a second tonight, when R-Truth came out and said that he had, talked himself into a tag team title defense against AOP, I thought they were gonna do a title switch tonight. I thought that maybe they
Yeah.
were just gonna say, screw it, you know what, we need to get these on a more serious team, and that it was gonna basically roll into a full blown AOP New Day feud for the tag titles.
Yeah.
And man, as they were coming out for the entrances, I was kind of like going back and forth in my head, like, would I pull the trigger on this? Like, is that something I would actually do? Because I also think the Final Testament has kind of been dead in the water, like since Arrival. So it's like, do you want to move? Do you want to move the titles off of this established tag team that isn't taken very seriously and thus is kind of dragging the tag team titles down? Only to put them on this other team that also isn't really taken all that seriously, but is at least a serious act.
Mm-hmm.
And I landed at, I mean, maybe it's a slight improvement if you had slotted them on AOP, and then they just went with the lame duck finish that's going to continue this thing with New Day. And man, those tag titles have fallen from grace very, very quickly.
Yeah, they were touting how long Miz and Truth had held the belts, and I don't know that that's something you want to brag about if you're WWE. It doesn't
No.
legitimize Miz and Truth. It just delegitimizes the tag titles. That it wasn't some transitional novelty fun thing coming out of WrestleMania season, but it was something they're sticking with. Tonight's fortune teller segment with APA versus AOP. Truth getting a word confused. It was better than the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, but I still don't think it was funny or clever enough. It just, Truth is really talented and clever and funny. You put him with Miz and whatever they're doing with this, it's. I mean, I know they want to have Truth on the show because there's people in that company who are really big fans of his, his comedic touch. But the skits they're doing are not working. This was better than average for them, but average has been awful, and so it's not a high compliment.
But they've just sort of progressively gotten worse too. Like overall, I agree tonight was better than the last few weeks, but it just seems like there's less like there was an interest in the climb. There was an interest to see them reunite and then win the titles at WrestleMania. But ever since then, it's just been sort of this lull and a general disinterest. And I think that's because people recognize that as long as the titles are on them, they're not going to be taken seriously in any way. And this isn't a team that needs tag titles to
do what they
fill their role. Yeah.
Totally right. Is he under? By the way, just prediction: does Xavier join Final Testament or not?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it'd be weird.
I know. I kind of hope he does because then they have something in mind that maybe will just give us a break from Xavier being Xavier.
I know.
For so long.
I just kind of think like if Final Testament were a hotter act with more defined parameters and they felt like they were going somewhere, then I'd say like, yeah, maybe this is an opportunity to transition Woods into a different role and try something new. But with it being so dull as it is, at least to date, it just seems to me like if they were to pull the trigger on it, it probably peters out quickly, and then they're just kind of like clamoring to try to reunite New Day. I something needs to be done with New Day. I don't know what it is. I think I've said on this post show before with you, they're just missing something without Big E. They're just not the same.
Yeah. Agreed. Also, did we really have to have Pat McAfee take on announcing responsibilities when Samantha Irving left tonight? He's annoying as it is at the broadcast table, but of course he had to make announcing wrestlers about getting himself over as well. I was actually going to compliment him a bit by saying I didn't notice his obnoxiousness that much until that point. And yeah, so yeah, I mean,
I want to push back on like something I've seen lately on Twitter and a few other places about sort of people's discontent with Pat McAfee,
yeah,
attributing it solely to some of his antics on his own show and the promotion of the promotion of Aaron Rodgers and all of that stuff. I mean, I don't think that I don't think that the decline in his ability on commentary necessarily needs to be tied into some of the more annoying proclivities he's had outside of his tenure in WWE. Like,
mhm.
I think that like they're not mutually exclusive. I think that it just so happens to coincide at the same time. Like, yes, Pat has done some problematic, questionable things on his YouTube show or now ESPN show, and also he is a worse commentator than he was during his first stint in WWE. And I don't
Right.
think that they're necessarily related in any way. So, I mean, I personally was a huge advocate of Pat McAfee during his initial run.
Yeah.
I went to bat for him many times on this show and
Yeah.
on other shows on the Torch, and I find him borderline insufferable now.
Yeah. I want to go back and watch a SmackDown from when he was first on and
yeah,
kind of just go, did I change or did he change? I mean, I think you're right. I think he changed. I think there's something kind of pathetically juvenile about him now. And I don't use those words lightly, but it's watching him and I just like, he just seems smaller than he did then. And it's weird because he's a big deal in the media, but I like he's taken on and this is where I think there's more of a connection to what he's doing outside of WWE, in that I think when he interviews celebrities, he does so without dignity. And I don't, by the way, I have to caveat this. I've seen very little of Pat McAfee, and I probably should have said that before I start. But the clips I've seen, he seems like this sycophant. Like, please love me. I don't want to offend you with any of my questions. I'm playing the role of a journalist, but those journalists are mean and they ask tough things, and I'm gonna like put you over and gush over you.
Yep.
And when you say something, I'm going to sell your joke like it's the funniest thing ever. That's my sample of McAfee, but I haven't watched anything he's done start to finish. But from my perspective, the things that have been high profile with him have made me think less of him as a man, as a full-fledged adult. He just seems like he's a celebrity worshiping sports guy who doesn't come up, just kind of lacks some dignity. And then he comes on Raw and he's making, poop jokes, which is just, it's like third grade stuff. And he's shrunk as a person in front of our very eyes when he was on SmackDown, there seemed to be an aura of enthusiasm and playfulness, but he was a dignified grown-up bringing some gravitas to the table and product knowledge. And there does seem to be something different. And it has at least coincided with what I've seen of him on his show. So I don't know, maybe aspects of his show has changed him as he's tried to remain relevant and, keep getting big names, and apparently pays people to be on a show sometimes too, which is weird. But anyway, Brandon.
My read on it, especially lately, has been that
do you see a decent amount of his stuff? Let me ask that first.
Not more recently, but I've probably seen a little bit more than you have. But I think that your assessment is very fair of just how he treats guests and whatnot. Yeah. But when I hear him on commentary now, it sounds to me like a guy who is just like wholly unprepared to do this.
So he's
like
faking
he doesn't. He doesn't have the product knowledge that he once did because he doesn't have the time. He doesn't have the time to watch it and keep up with it the way that he once did. And so instead he relies on a lot of like catchphrases that he's coined that he might be over on his show, but don't apply to wrestling. Like he will very purposefully pronounce words wrong and does it on a regular basis. That's not something that he used to do, and I think it is something that he does on his show, and it's a joke an inside joke he has with the other guys, and he brings it over to Raw, and it doesn't land. It just comes off as annoying and like he's filling air because he doesn't know what else to say.
Yeah. Yep. I think you've added some knowledge to even how I'm perceiving what he's doing. Um, so JB just concludes, as always, love the show and go VIP. Thank you for that. Everybody, by the way, can become a VIP member. I mentioned earlier, we'll put a little graphic up for our YouTube users, pwtorch.com/go VIP. You can support what we do and get ad-free versions of this show in podcast format. Subscribe, by the way, even if you're not going VIP, subscribe if you haven't yet to our podcast feeds. Search Wade Keller on your podcast app, and you'll see a blue logo and a red logo pop up. The red logo are the post shows that we do here. Not everything that we do on the podcast side, on the podcast feed, shows up here on YouTube. So you'll want to subscribe to get all the content, including some flashback shows. And then the blue logo shows our flagship. We are sticking audio only right now on our flagship. So tomorrow, Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net will be with me, and we're and we'll be recording that audio format only, and that'll be on the Wade Keller podcast feed, the blue logo show. So search Wade Keller to subscribe to that. And while you're at it, search PWTorch for the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. Just great shows on that lineup. I am a big fan of so many of the pairs of hosts that are doing theme specific, topic specific shows on WWE, NXT, AEW, the 90s Past Cast, looking back at a Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter that I put out 30 years ago on the weekly anniversary. Latest show, Alex and Patrick go like 2 hours delving into the newsletter from 30 years ago, and so much more. I'm not going to try to name all the shows. I try to rotate which ones I spent time on because I don't want the plugs to be too long. But search PWTorch, subscribe to that. It is free. If you do go VIP, by the way, all these shows I just mentioned are on the VIP podcast feed. Also, you can divide them into separate feeds. We have customizable feeds for VIP members, or you can just have one feed, catch all of it. There's VIP exclusive shows and ad-free versions of our free shows. And then there's all kinds of other perks that come with it. Ad-free website, 35 years of archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, fascinating stuff. Again, we're compatible with Spotify, Apple Podcast app, just about every podcast app out there. So check it out. Okay. Back to another email here. This is from Junaid, who says, Wade and Brandon, I hope you're doing well. I think this whole Liv Judgment Day storyline is okay at the moment, and there's more to come. But is there enough focus on the title? She defeated a legend in Becky Lynch, and there was no mention of that tonight. It's just 1 week, and I'm taking a wait-and-see approach to whether the title is being downplayed too much or whether they'll make a big deal of it when the time comes. The title wasn't always the main focus when Rhea Ripley had it, but I feel like they could at least have other women wrestlers on Raw talking about it and desperately coveting it, but they haven't really showed women talking about wanting the championship. So do you think them not focusing on it is this week? Or how do you feel about that and the feud in general? It is interesting. If Becky had decided to stay, I wonder if she'd still have the title and they'd just be doing the Liv storyline. But because Becky decided to leave, they gave Liv the belt to give her some extra credibility, but they didn't have in mind her being the focus of the women's title division on Raw.
Yeah, I think that it was noticeable tonight, and I'm hoping that it is something that they course correct on rather quickly. It's fine if they have a couple of weeks here and there where the focus primarily is on the furthering the Liv and Dom storyline. And I understand that Liv's purpose, now that she has obtained the women's world title, is that she wants to essentially get her revenge on Rhea Ripley specifically. So it's all about, what she can do to ruin Rhea Ripley's life. So she isn't focused on the world title right now, but other women on the show certainly should be. So even if Liv is totally preoccupied with the Dom storyline, I do think that they need to very quickly move some other women in position to perhaps challenge Liv on the road to whenever Rhea is going to come back, be it SummerSlam or, the Berlin show or whatever. But they're going to have some other shows here in the interim, and Raw needs main events. So, it would be good if they can line up some challengers for her along the way.
Yep. All right, I'm next. What do you Drew? Let's see here. Drew being distracted constantly. They weren't subtle of having these accusations thrown at Drew by Michael Cole throughout the night, but I personally think Drew has a point in Cole. He might be right, but he's being unfair and going too strong with his claims and yelling at Drew. This could have a purpose, and CM Punk travels thousands of miles to cost Drew the title, but I feel that would make Punk seem more like a heel. We talked about that earlier, so similar thoughts there. Drew's doing a good job, but it feels like WWE's trying very hard to make him seem like the bad guy. But I'm pretty much always nodding along with what he's saying. Maybe he's just too entertaining. Brandon, just what's the latest thoughts on Drew?
I mean, that's definitely been the case with the Priest stuff. Drew's been speaking a lot of truth about the way that Priest has come off as champion, the way that he won the championship, and that can be an issue because the crowd will often find themselves agreeing with him. I think that CM Punk is still over enough and is antagonistic enough to McIntyre and vice versa. I think McIntyre has been aggressive in his pursuit of CM Punk enough that when they are opposite each other again, it won't be particularly challenging for them to get their desired reactions. I think Punk will get cheered, McIntyre will get booed. There might be some McIntyre fans in there. Obviously, that I say that with the caveat that if Punk gets involved on Saturday, it's going to be the complete opposite. I mean, you're not going to get McIntyre booed in front of his hometown in this big title match. So I think that they'll be okay long term. And I think in the meantime, I mean, Raw is just hurting for top baby faces at that peak main event level. I mean, you have Jey Uso, but he is going to be preoccupied with Money in the Bank stuff. He's already sort of cycled through the feud with Damian Priest. So that leaves no one at the top of the card right now. And so being the challenger to a heel champion, Drew McIntyre naturally slots into that role. And he also is just really entertaining. So I think he's getting the crowd to get behind him pretty easily at this point.
Related topic from Junaid to close out the email. I think Drew or Gunther would be good choices to be champs coming out of SummerSlam, but I'd go for Gunther primarily because I feel he's one of those wrestlers who should always have a title. Plus, having long title reigns is sort of his thing. You could always keep Drew away from the title and having him win personal feuds and keeping him strong while capitalizing on Gunther's ability as a long-term champion. So who would you pick as a long-term champion coming out of SummerSlam? I'm torn because I've always thought Drew was someone who would be better off with the title. It feels like if he's not in a world championship feud, it has to be really good or it just doesn't feel quite right. I'm really curious what they plan to do with whoever loses at SummerSlam. If it is indeed Drew versus Gunther, there could be rapid fire title changes that set up Punk against Gunther instead, or Priest still has it and Drew has a different journey he's going to be on because of what happened Saturday. So going full circle back to our initial topic, I don't know, but Drew or Gunther, let's just strip away how they get there. Where do you think they should go into the end of summer and fall with their centerpiece champion on Raw?
Man, it's really hard because you look at the path that Drew has taken to get here, and you sort of feel like he felt like the logical choice coming out of WrestleMania to be world champion, and they pivoted and went in the direction of Priest, and so McIntyre never really got his day as the main focal point of Raw as a heel champion, the way I think a lot of us thought that he would coming into WrestleMania. So I'm inclined to still want to see that, but Gunther having the guaranteed title shot as a result of winning King of the Ring puts a wrench in that because I also don't think that you want to have Gunther lose his first big world title singles match.
Right.
So
Yep. Exactly.
I guess I'm more inclined to think that it'll be Gunther coming out of SummerSlam, and that maybe whether Drew was ever champion or champion for a brief period of time, it has something to do with CM Punk is the reason that he isn't champion or never was champion, so that they continue that feud. They could also end up moving Drew to SmackDown to try to still get him a world championship at some point, later in the fall or late summer or whatever. Just because it's not draft season doesn't mean that they can't work out some sort of trade or do something if they wanted to move him around. And Cody is already running very dry on opponents. So they're going to have to get some names over there to face Cody because, I mean, after AJ Styles, like, unless you've got Roman Reigns coming in for SummerSlam or you've got The Rock, like, what do you really even have?
What you mentioned 2 names. What do you think? Like, where do you think they really? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I assume that Roman comes back as a babyface. I mean, all
Yeah.
signs sort of point to a bloodline feud.
Well, he's going to get cheered whether they like it or not.
Right. And
Yeah.
to me, it seems more likely that you're going to tell a pretty significant story between the two factions of the bloodline before any of those guys are going after the world title again. So really, that leaves The Rock, and he can't participate in much TV leading up to SummerSlam. So if you rule those guys out, I mean, who is left? Who's left for Cody?
I don't know. I mean, I know. I mean, that's why
Yeah.
I'm puzzled by Drew and Gunther both. It seemed like, if this was Tony Khan, he'd just create a new title for one of them. And like Ospreay and Okada and yeah, go ahead.
There's also, I don't know what the timeline is, but there's also Seth Rollins. I mean,
I
we
know.
don't know
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
he is.
It's kind of easy to forget about him because there's so much going on. But
Mhm.
I mean, you had,
Mhm.
by the way, we talk about Raw star power. Jay wasn't on the show. Gunther was on the show. You have Jay, Gunther, and then you add those two to the mix, Seth and CM Punk, and Raw is loaded. And that might mean
Mhm.
somebody gets traded or moved through maybe.
And think about the guys that were not on the show tonight, and they were still able to satisfy a crowd. I mean, you
Mhm.
didn't have Gunther, you didn't have Jay, you didn't have CM Punk, you didn't have Seth Rollins, you didn't have Becky Lynch.
I know. Yeah. Yep. Good point. By the way, we talked about Gunther on a hot take a couple weeks ago. So if you are on our YouTube channel, I encourage you to go check it out. The WWE just mess up Gunther's path to the world title. I think that was the first 12-minute hot take we did. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't yet. I think it's as relevant today as it was then when we posted it. So search PWTorch. Well, just go to youtube.com/PWTorch, subscribe, and go to the homepage, and you can catch up on our 12-minute hot takes. We've done around a half a dozen of them so far, and we'll continue, hopefully, to increase the pace of them. Brandon, we got to get you on one of those for a 12-minute hot take one of these weeks when there's something in the news that we can't wait a couple weeks to talk about. Okay. I think there was... Nope, that closed that out. I'm trying to think. Oh, I know. I was going to revisit. We've had some comments about our Pat McAfee discussion, and so I'll throw them out. Ryan says, I never found McAfee appealing. And Neil says, both of you are correct. It's hard to watch his show after it went to ESPN. So apparently that was a change for him. I don't watch enough to know why. I just know from what I've seen what my opinion is of him. And I hear 3 hours of him every week on Raw. Sean says, yeah, he's just gotten more obnoxious. I said I posted Ryan's. There it is. Al Larcher says, wow, imagine having this strong of an opinion of a man's personal character from only sound bites of a 2-hour show. It's fair to judge him on Raw, but the extra stuff is extra and seems personal. Yeah, definitely not personal. I mean, he might be a great guy, but as a color commentator and from these snippets of his show that I've watched, I don't, I mean, I've never been super comfortable with people going from a field they cover or a field that they're in to then playing the role of interviewer or journalist. And that's happening everywhere anyway. I mean, it happens in politics. People work for an administration and then they end up on air, sometimes hosting shows and that kind of thing. And it happens in sports. It's a reality. But I think when you make that transition, when it still seems like you're just, worried about upsetting, your old pals, it's a disservice to viewers, but it's a different kind of journalism, and obviously it's working for him. But I mean, it's certainly not personal, but I'm also not going to hold back how he comes across to me from what I've seen. But I think it was, fair, and I drew attention to the fact that maybe and I don't think I'll be doing this soon, but if somebody wants it to point out like an actual long form interview where they think he does a good job, it'll help me look at him differently. I'm certainly open to that, but I'm not going to spend a whole week listening to dozens of hours of him to try to find that if it doesn't exist. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if Ryan just said I'd put Braun Breaker right in there with Gunther, CM Punk, and Drew. And Neil said the chase is better than holding the title. So, and Ryan says I think CM Punk's winning Money in the Bank. So just some straight comments there. Brandon, anything else from tonight's show as I kind of scroll through my report? I hope everybody reads it at pwtorch.com. Anything else stand out to you? We didn't give a ton of attention to Lyra Valkyria. I thought of bringing her up a couple of times. I think we might have covered.
I was gonna mention her. She definitely soft reaction from the crowd. I think it depends city to city right now who is catching on, like with her entrance chant, and whether or not they kind of know her. I think she'll catch on in due time, and having the, getting the rub from Becky will certainly help. Only other thing I can think of, more teasing backstage for Sonya Deville. She was chatting with Natty, which I thought was a good touch after their interaction the last couple of weeks. I'm glad to see Sonya back. I think she could do some cool stuff if she's getting together, a stable of sorts, especially if we're going to see the dissolution of Damage Control. A stable led by Sonya could be an interesting replacement for that.
It's not clear what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's just hanging out backstage. Like, have they updated like what her? I mean, she's been an assistant. By the way, Star Power, no Adam Pearce tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, if people paid to see Adam Pearce, they didn't get to see him look frazzled and disheveled and stressed out. So he got a week off. Imagine that.
It seemed to me like Sonya is trying to recruit people for. She believes that she can make people care about Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler. I found it interesting that they weren't really alluding to the fact that Shayna and Sonya were tag team partners briefly before Sonya got hurt, and I was wondering if they would bring that up, but not yet. It seems like she's recruiting, and Natty, after losing her match last week or the week prior, approached Sonya specifically and said she was looking for a change. So it seems like she's going to be in some sort of managerial role for the other women.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's everything. I scroll through the show. Anything else on Lyra Valkyria?
No, I think just that, hopefully she catches on. I think the rub from Becky that she got will help. I mean, I agree that like the 50-50 booking, her losing to EO, it could be better, but EO also kind of needed a win, given, how things have gone for her the last couple of months.
Yep. I think that covers it all. Okay, cool. Brandon, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who watched us live or who's watching us on delay. And thanks, of course, to our main base on the podcast side of things, still listening to us and downloading the show on your podcast app. We've been doing this for a long time, and your loyalty to the way that we approach our coverage is why we're still doing it. One thing you can do to help support us is like this video and subscribe if you are watching us on YouTube. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube and you are not subscribing to the podcast, it helps us when you do that also. It's a free thing you can do. Just take 20 seconds right now, search Wade Keller in your podcast app and download our latest shows. There's times I know there's sports shows that I'm a fan of, local ones where I sometimes watch on YouTube, put on the TV in the background while I work, and other times I walk the dog and I have their podcast feed rather than YouTube because it's just easier to control. So double up with us, and that does help. Every bit helps, and that sincerely helps us. So search Wade Keller and subscribe to the blue logo and red logo shows and refresh every day. And then same thing, search PWTorch and refresh every day, get those shows. And it just helps us all around. So those are things you can do for free to help us. And it again, I underline, it makes a difference for everybody involved here. And then Go VIP. That's obviously the best way you can help us. You can do it through Patreon, through your Apple account, or through credit card, debit card, or PayPal. All those options available at pwtorch.com/GoVIP. Brandon, you are covering Clash at the Castle Saturday on PWTorch, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear from you yet, so I don't remember hearing from you. So I thought you looked a little when I said that earlier. I thought maybe you're looking to jump in.
I didn't quite catch if you said that I was or wasn't covering, but this is
Yeah.
one of the couple this summer that I am not
Gotcha.
covering. So
now, did you not that it's not a big deal either way, but did you tell me and I forgot?
yes.
Okay, all right. Go with that. I want to make that clear that it's my fault. Well, not that it would be your fault to not tell me yet. It's still days away, but all right.
Yeah,
So
it is in fact your fault. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for underlining that. So Saturday I'll be covering Clash at the Castle live, and then we'll be doing a VIP roundtable afterwards, reviewing the show start to finish, and then Greg Parks will have Wrestling Night in America. Are you going to join him Sunday night, or is he doing the show? I don't know what's going on my own.
He has not talked to me yet. If he is doing it on Sunday rather than after the show, there is a pretty decent chance that I can. If it's Saturday, I cannot.
As soon as I'm done here, I'm adding to my to-do list tomorrow. Get organized about what's going on this weekend. So cool. All right. Thank you, Brandon. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thanks to our on-site correspondent, Denny, and our emailers and people in the chat room and everybody. We'll be by the way, Wednesday, we are going to have a first time. Let me confirm that I'm right. I don't want to be wrong on something else.
I with all your confidence now.
Stephanie Chase will be the co-host with me on after AW Dynamite on Wednesday night. So I'm looking forward to having her on the post show on camera, giving us a different voice here. She had done some YouTube work with us last year with Zach and Tyler, and she'll be back with me for the first time on a post show. So definitely looking forward to that. And then Jason Paul tomorrow. So send your emails. That's what I was going to do for the flagship. If you've got questions, comments, feedback, and you're listening to the show on delay or live, but you want to suggest things for Jason and I to talk about, or for Jason and me to talk about, or just rant or whatever, the email is wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. We'll record that on Tuesday afternoon. So get those emails in soon, and then look for that show on our blue feed, the Wade Keller Podcast, later on Tuesday. All right, that'll do it for me. Thanks, Brandon, and we'll talk to you all next time.